Hi. Um, I'm going to be starting a series of information. If you have seen any videos the last day or two and couldn't necessarily hear me very well, I do apologize. This is a restart of that series. My computer didn't necessarily have a good pick up on my sound. Anyway, to introduce myself, you can call me Luna, okay? It's a nickname that I do have. For my own reasons, personal and otherwise, I'm not going to give you my real name or where I'm located right now. There's a lot of different reasons, like I said. I'm pretty sure that if you really wanted to find me, you could. Whether you're government, private citizen, business, whatever, you could still find me. Anyway, the reason why I'm doing this, why I created this channel, was that I'm a common citizen. I have a unique background. No, it's not being a political pundit, analyst, or anything like that. No, I've never run or gotten a public office. Never will. I don't want that mess. But I will put pressure on my elected officials. I'm not a historian. My math and science is skewed into one particular profession that took a college degree, and I worked that job, overworked that job until burnout. And yes, it is one of the major ones that have high burnout rate. I'm not a philosopher. I'm not a sociologist, psychiatrist. Like I said, I'm a citizen of the United States. The qualifications that I'm going to give you is that I am one of Gen X that was lucky enough to be on the good side of the last gasp of good public education. I have had the pleasure of a mandatory civics class. Granted, it was 40 years ago, but I keep up on information. Politics and government is two of those. But my civics course was taught by a literal professor, a PhD, in Poli-sci, who also taught at one of the local colleges. And he was the only teacher for civics. That civics course, that civics class, didn't just cover like how our government works, the three branches, your responsibilities as a citizen, how the three branches are co-equal and all that. Not just that. It was partly also comparative government, how those governments and social structures worked, the pros and cons. Also, one of the big things that I remember was 5 landmark Supreme Court decisions, SCOTUS, that we had to pick, tear apart, figure out not only what that landmark decision said, but also have to write a paper arguing the opposite argument. That was to show just how much thought, structure, and effort it goes to get those judgments. It's not easy. So there's that. For everything else that I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to apologize for. Not one thing. Because I was born that way. And what I've seen, what I've heard, has colored and created my mindset. So, obviously, I'm a woman. Yes, I'm white. I can't help that. So whoever's got a problem with me being a woman or white and don't want to listen to what I'm going to say, fine. Go ahead. I respect that. I've never been exactly completely stupid, but I'm not going to say I'm an egghead either. Just not. I have my flaws. Everybody has their flaws, good and bad. But this is a dichotomy that has formed in this country. You could be a child of parents who don't like anyone or anything that doesn't fit their view of the world. Okay? And it doesn't matter the topic. Okay? And be so passionate about that belief or viewpoint that they try to teach their children that same outlook and behavior. Some kids buy into it. Some kids buy into it and go out into the world and look around and say, wait a minute. Then you've got those who have those same sort of parents, but as they grow up, they see a public version of the person, private part of the person, look around in public, how people act and all that, and they don't buy into it. I'm sort of the middle one. My parents were, they were tolerant, sort of, as long as you followed their rules. What they thought a person shouldn't be, think, do, whatever, okay? So, for their time, they were semi-progressive or progressive, but not necessarily. I heard slurs, disparaging, that sort of thing in private. So when I went to public school, my elementary and middle school, what is now called middle school years, were in a small town. And the schools were predominantly or 100% completely white. The culture around me was male-dominated. Being in the Bible Belt, you might have had that as a given. So you had certain belief systems that were ingrained, intolerant, very strong on what and who did what and when and how. My high school, however, was the only fully integrated minority and white, poor white, or lower middle class white school in the city. There was one other that had a small population of people of color, but not so much. They had the district carved up where it was very plain to see that they concentrated one population or type of population in one school and one school only, or tried to anyway. Okay, if you can't tell, I'm old. I'm not as old as Methuselah, but I'm old enough to be considered Gen X. I'm progressive. That progressive doesn't just cover politics, okay? Although it does. Now, before you get your hair in a twist, let me explain what I mean by progressive. Progressive means that you change with the times. Mental behaviors, thinking, all that. Okay. You might wonder why. Change is a universal concept and an inevitability. Okay. Sorry, I have no teeth. If you don't change, you become stagnant. If you're stagnant, you end up getting yourself into a hole that you can't get out of. And what happens to stagnant people and populations? They die off. Not just die, but not just like the physical die off. They become a hindrance or a threat to anything that they don't believe in or want to be stuck in. And therefore, they, because of that, you're killing yourself off of changing or progressing with humanity as a whole. like I said, not just one topic, okay? Now, my version of being progressive is also being a humanist. I don't care if you end up being the definition by biology or whatever definition that they consider a person human, okay? But you are purple, silver, bald, but you got silver on your head, 3 eyes, web extremities, but you are human in actions and thinking. To me, you're a human being. You might throw a fit about that. I don't care though, okay? That's your views. I respect your views. My view is that everyone here on Earth bleeds red blood. Most life forms here bleed red blood. Does that mean zebras are human? No. So they aren't human. But you have the structure of genetics, chromosomes, thinking, physical shapes, whatever, okay? If you are considered a human, you bleed red blood. Doesn't matter the skin or anything like that. If you're going down to trying to say reasoning and language as being part of human, I'm going to blow your mind. Dolphins, whales, chimpanzees, or most of the hominid species like apes, chimpanzees, and that sort of thing, all have what you can say is language. In fact, if you really get down to it, every species on Earth have some form, even primitively, some sort of communication or language capability and usage. If that wasn't the case, then that means that particular species would end up eating each other out of existence, simply put. If you're talking reasoning and or using tools, well, those hominids that I mentioned, chimps and apes and that, ravens or another species, they all use reasoning and tools to problem solve and to create even what you might consider a tool to solve those problems. Octopi use reasoning and problem-solving skills. They use their tentacles as tools to solve those problems. If you're thinking brain power or that sort of thing, intelligence, most species on Earth have some sort of intelligence. If you're talking very simple life forms like bacteria or whatever, or the quasi or non-living things like viruses, no, you're not going to have intelligence to that, okay? So that being said, okay, I'm going to leave the definition of being human officially into the hands of geneticists, anthropologists, various branches of sciences that cover all the bases that we as humans have as traits. Now, if you're talking politics, that still is based on change. We as a society do not think the same as we did even 5 years ago, 10 years ago, a decade ago, a couple decades ago. I grew up in the late 60s and 70s, so therefore, especially then, things have changed. You have to change, because if you don't, you're blocking yourself off, and that will create problems for yourself and for society as a whole. Now, also, for humans especially, we live in a hierarchical type grouping system. Someone is always going to be a leader. Then there's going to be possibly, if it's more than two, a lower level person who could take the lead or is the main follower of the leader. And then you've got people who aren't the leaders, but they are like the workers or whatever else. So what do I believe? A good leader, a good group, doesn't just listen to the leadership or those who could be considered part of the leadership. They listen to ideas, outlooks, beliefs of the group in general, no matter how big or small. It could be a two-person hunting group all the way to the world, full global population. You take what is honestly believed by the majority, and you do the best you can for the majority. There is never going to be a one-size-fits-all decision-making process or decisions that are made that will fit one group or one type of thinking over another, because if you get people as a group together, you're going to have to compromise. I don't see that right now, and that's one of our biggest problems right now. So that's the major part of me. Now, for my outlook and beliefs, here's a bit about me. I've gone to college, like I said. I've served. Not long. I found out, and so did the branch I served in, that we weren't made for each other. Although, at the time, I thought I could I could force myself into a mold to serve for longer than I did. That goes into a whole different line of thinking and reasoning and all that, but I did serve. I've had multiple family members who served. I mean, I'm not talking my great uncle or great grandfather who served in World War I II, or Vietnam, Korea, whatever, okay? I'm not talking that. I'm talking close family. I did have an uncle who served, and even closer family. That's part of the reason why I will not give any more hints of who I am, because in this day and age, I don't want any more taken away than has already been taken away. I've been married long term, one marriage, one man. I've lived overseas. I've hosted exchange students. I am considered handicapped. I will not blow sunshine. So I'm going to say that you can say that I have mental issues, but you could even go stronger and say I'm mentally ill. I'm not going to hide that fact. But mentally ill doesn't mean that I'm insane. It doesn't mean that I can't follow social norms or decent behaviors or anything else. Also, that doesn't give you the right to look down on me and take that as one part of myself and put me down. That does not work. If you have not lived in my shoes and walked my walk, you don't have a say on my thinking, okay? Yes, you can discuss thinking patterns or whatever civilly, and you can try to change my mind, and if you've got a better way of doing things, you probably can change my mind, okay? But you have to do it civilly, logically, and respect me if I don't change my mind. I'll respect you if you respect me. Like I said, I have worked many jobs. The major one, I overworked. You're talking about 80 plus hours a week. No, 80 hours, 80 hours plus every 2 weeks. You're talking 12 to 16 hours every other day with one, maybe two days off for the week. I have not just listened to teachers in school. I've done my own research and teaching of myself, things that aren't taught in school, but are still very true. And a lot of that is studying civilizations and societies as they developed, rose, and fell. So I know at least part of the reasons why that has happened. Now, the reasoning for the video series I'm going to be doing is to touch on three major issues, or three major topics. One is history. It's not just going to be U.S. history. Our history ties into world history. If you think otherwise, you might not want to listen to anything that I say, okay? If you're only interested in that world history being European history that only covers white white people and all that. Also, again, this isn't for you. History, like people, places, things, all have, they're all dual, at least, in nature. Good, bad. You even have the gray area, so you could say even a trinity of aspects in any given situation, person, thought pattern, whatever. Everything is also interconnected. Every damn thing. From a virus to the most complicated life form on Earth, everything is interconnected. That can even go into ecology, because different ecological systems can affect another ecological system. For America, the U.S., that interconnectedness is a major foundational block for us. We have so many religious, political, racial, and whatever other blocks you might say of people represented, that you can't just cover one form of one area of history or anything like that. The next is civics. That means how the government works, why there is or should be three branches of co-equal government, comparative government, and at some point in time, that sort of thing. In this day and age, a lot of one branch bleeds into another. They are all co-equal, yes, but not so much anymore. And yes, I'm putting myself out there, but frankly, that's one of the foundations of America. Now, I also took economy as a mandatory class in high school. That teacher made dirt seem exciting and knowledgeable. I didn't at that point have problems staying awake in class. Not that one. That one I had a hard time keeping my mind focused on the lectures, and a hard time keeping my eyes open. The third thing, since everything is interconnected, has to deal with philosophy and sociology. You can't have one thing not tied into something else. Now, I'll remind you again, I'm not a political pundit, analyst, historian, sociologist, archaeologist, psychiatrist, anything like that. I do have a degree, but it's for a particular job. But I do have a great deal of knowledge and critical thinking skills. I keep up on various topics. I can't keep up with everything in the world, but I do try to keep up with a good portion of it. Anything that's got research behind it, I don't just get my information from one source. I take multiple sources. I filter out the major highlights of those sources for whatever topic I am researching. I weed out what is totally 100% opposite of each other, and whatever is left over that is more like central, that's what I use. That's how I deal with information. Because, yes, you've got the two major sides and then that gray area. That gray area does not have or may not walk, next metaphors here, or be the path that either side would want to recognize or deal with. Sorry, I don't whitewash things. I'm going to tell you the unvarnished truth, which some of what I'm going to bring up in these videos isn't going to be what you think or want to hear. That's just the way things go. That is because of various factors that have figured in our history. How people want to think rather than the actual truth of the matter. So, that's me in a nutshell. I'll be uploading another video here real shortly, so that's so we can get into some of the meat of what this series is going to be, and we'll go from there. So have a good day. I'm Luna again. Be kind to everyone. Learn everything that you can. Respect everyone around you. And keep an open mind. Even if what you think has happened isn't what you were taught. Thanks. Later.